Hey coders, welcome to another video. This video is going to be all about Booleans and if statements and else statements and Elif statements, all of them statements. We're just going to jump right into it. As always, like from before, I like to go over the questions for the day, the things that you're going to learn. One is what is a Boolean? Two is what are comparison operators? Three is what are logical operators? Four, what are if else statements, and then what are elif statements, and then as always common mistakes if any. All right, definition of a Boolean. So a Boolean is a data type. What we learned about data types is that anything with quotation marks are strings, any whole number is an integer, and any decimal number is a float. And so now we have this fourth data type called a Boolean. And the definition of a Boolean is something that returns true or false. Now, you can state a variable to be true or false, but you can also have some type of condition that determines if something is true or false. And that's what we are going to go over about comparison operators. So what are comparison operators? There are 6 in total. On the left side in yellow, we have the greater than and then greater than or equal to. In the middle, we have less than or equal to. And then on the right, we have equal to or not equal to. Now, the difference between greater than and greater than equal, or less than and less than equal sign is inclusive. It'll include the number. Greater than and less than signs are not inclusive. Then we have equal to versus not equal to. Just think of them as opposites. Does one side equal to the other side? Or does one side not equal the other side? We also have logical operators called and, or, and not. And means that everything in the comparison has to be true. So and means everything must be true to be true. Or means only one thing needs to be true for the entire statement to be true. And then not is the result of an opposite. So for example, not raining. If raining was true, when you say not raining, it equals false. So it just flips it. And it's practice time. So I'm creating a new replit. So let's take an opportunity to look at the 6 comparison operators, and then we will test out an and, or, and a not as well. There are a couple of ways you can do this. Because I don't really care about the example and saving it into a variable, we're just going to print out examples. So for example, does 100 equal 100? If I press run, it's going to print true because 100 is equal to 100. I want to show you what it means to say not equal. So if I said 100 is not equal to 100, it's actually going to print false because 100 is equal to 100. So not means the opposite. There we go. Now let's see. Let's try the greater than sign. So print 25 greater than -1. And it should print out true because 25 is greater than -1. But if I said print 25 greater than equal to 25, it should print 2 because it should print true because it's including 25. Then we have our less than signs. Let's see, -1 is less than -100, which should be false. And then print is 100 less than or equal to 101. And that should be true. All right, let's talk about the nots. and the ands and the ors. Okay, so remember how I said, let's start off with an or. Remember how I said an or, only one of the conditions out of all of the conditions needs to be true for the entire condition to be true. So what does that mean? If I said print is 100 equal to 100, or 100 is greater than 101, what OR is going to do is it's going to compare, find out the result of this one, and then find out the result of this one, and then determine an ultimate result based off of if one of them is at least true. So we're going to press run. And it prints out true here. And the reason why this is true, remember that OR, in order for OR to be true, only one thing needs to be true. And the part that's actually true is 100 is equal to 100. So that's true, which means that the entire statement will be true, even though this is false. So let's try an and. With the same example, actually, let me grab this, copy, paste, and I'm going to add an and. Now, and if I compare both of these sides with an and, it's going to return false because both sides need to be true in order for an entire and condition to be true. This is true, but this is not true, so it makes it false. It takes some time to get used to it, but you'll get it eventually. You can also add more conditions. I can add as many ors and ands as I want past this condition. Just make sure that you are comparing something each time that you add an or and an and. Okay, and not. Normally a not is attached to the beginning of an expression so that it can flip. So for example, if I said print 100 equals 100, and said not, if you notice I put parentheses because what I wanted to do is similar to math. I wanted to solve the expression first and return true or false, and then put a not attached to it so that I can just flip afterwards, figure out the results. So technically 100 is equal to 100, but when I put this not here, it's the same thing as saying a not equals. So it will flip to false. I can say print 101 greater than or equal to 101 and not 100 not equal to 100. So this sounds a little tricky. You have to kind of treat it like math and solve different sections first before you can figure out the solution. So let's take a look. Let's do parentheses first. So these are put in parentheses. 100 not equal to 100 is technically false, but a not flips it, so it makes it true. So this side is true completely. And then is 101 greater than or equal to 101? And that is true. So this side is true and this side is true. And an and means that both sides needs to be true in order for the entire thing to be true, which is true. A lot of true statements. So let's press run and it's going to give me true. So some of this requires you to think about the logic. And it's funny because in teaching in regular school, my kids will get annoyed with the fact that they have to think about math, and I'm just like, well, math is computer science and computer science is math, so this just comes along with the territory. But if you just take the moment to use your common sense and logic or what you know about it, it should help you understand how this works. So now that you guys know Booleans, the whole point of understanding how Booleans work is to really place them into if-else statements to compare different sides. And in an if-else statement, the definition is the ability to make decisions that result in a true or false condition or statement or whatever you want to call it. Note that an else is considered default. So, for example, in real life, if I said if it's raining outside, bring an umbrella, else don't bring an umbrella. So an else statement is just default. Let's do the analogy that I was talking about. So let's say raining equals true. And then I'm going to say if raining equals true, you have to place a colon to signify what's going to be part of the if statement. And then I'm going to press enter. And if you notice the tabs, Python, one of the most annoying things about Python that you have to get used to is how things stay together. And so for things to stay together in an if statement, we need to make sure that they're indented a certain way. And so this is tabbed in, and anything that I put inside of this tab section will be part of this if statement. So I want to say print bring an umbrella. So I'm going to press run. Bring an umbrella because raining is equal to true. Now, let's say I have an else. If you notice when I press enter, it still gives me a tab, but your else has to pair with your if. So I'm going to press delete so I can go back one so I can be aligned with this if statement. So else, remember, is default, meaning that there is no condition that I'm comparing it to. It's just automatically, if this is not true, then we're going to do else. So I'm going to say print. No need for an umbrella. Okay. And now this will still print bring an umbrella because right now raining is true. But if I turn this to false, raining is no longer true, which means that it's going to skip the if statement and by default do the else statement. No need for an umbrella here. We can also compare other things besides just a variable if it has true. We can also compare words, for example, name, which is a common variable that we've used in the past. Name, let's say it's Jane Doe. And we can say if name equals Jane Doe. Maybe we'll say print welcome back to class. And if it's not, maybe we'll say who are you? Just for fun. All right. If you notice, the if statement, if else statement is paired. You don't necessarily need to have an else statement with your if, but a good programmer normally has a pair just to catch if something is not true. And that's just to make sure that you always have a response regardless of what happens. But it's not necessarily required. Now, let's say we have other conditions that we want to check for besides just the if and the else. An if statement will check to see if one thing is true, but then if that's not true, then we have an else. But what if we wanted to check for other things but keep them all together? So that's where we have this whole thing called an Elif statement. So the definition of an Elif statement, Elif stands for else if. And you can check for other conditions with similar criteria, but at the same time, they all are clustered together. And only one of those things will happen. Not everything will happen. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to create a new section of stuff. Let's see. I can use age. Age is a good example of Elif. So let's say I had a program where you enter your age, or I enter an age, and based off of that age, it's going to determine what part of what stage in life I am. So if age is greater than if age is greater than 65, then let's say I want to print you are in your senior years. Elif age, this means, okay, well, if age is not greater than 65, let's look at another condition and compare. So I'm going to do a range. I want to say Elif age is greater than, let's say 40. So this, if you notice, if this isn't true, that means that age is less than 65. And so it's going to check to see if age is greater than 40, but it's going to be in between these two ranges because it wasn't greater than 65. So let's say you are in your prime adult life. Elif age is greater than 30. Print you are just getting started. Elif age is greater than 18. And let's print. Wow, so much life ahead of you. Elif age is greater than, I guess I'll do something between greater than 5. Print you're just a child. And then last but not least, if you're less than this, you're a baby. My grammar folks out there, I'll put you are. All right, so let's press run. And if you notice, it prints you are just a child because age is in between the ages or the range of 18 and 5. So it's going to print you are just a child because it is greater than 5, but not greater than 18. If you just put if statements here instead of elif, then it would check to see if it fits into each condition, and will print out as many conditions that are true for the age. This use of if elif statements are, you can think of them like an accordion. Let's say you wanted to check for multiple things, but you only want one result to happen. And so this is the case of using an if elif statement. If you notice, one if at the top and one else at the bottom, and then everything in the middle are elif statements. And you can have as many elif statements as you want, and that's why I like to use an accordion example, because an accordion can stretch and then it can shrink and it can stretch and it can do all of that. And so you can do the same thing with your elif statements as well. Common mistakes. The most common mistake that people have with if statements is, one, forgetting to tab and add this colon. It's a common mistake for a lot of people. So you have to get used to tabbing and indenting properly, and then you need to make sure that your if and else statements are paired. You can also add ands and ors to different statements. So let's say if I wanted to actually get greater than 65 and age is also less than greater than 65 but less than 75. Now, when you add another condition and you join it with an and or an or, you need to make sure that your second thing or your second item is also a condition too. So these need to be separate. You need to be comparing something, and you need to be comparing something here as well. And then you can put an and an or between that. So that's a common mistake as well if you're trying to use and ors. Some people write it wrong. So you need to make sure you always have a condition on each side. Remember, now that you know how to use inputs, instead of me setting the variable to a number or a name, I can use input so that I can grab that information. Now, let's say I wanted this to be a number. Remember that you need to change the input into an integer in order for it to be a number. Enter an age. And if you wanted it to be a decimal number, instead of it being an int, it would say float, so that you force the input to be a decimal number. And that's about it. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.